The morning sun cast long shadows across the sprawling grounds of the Maryland Military Training Academy, its stone buildings gleaming under the early light. Cadets hurried across the courtyard, boots clicking in unison on the concrete, voices mingling with the low hum of the flagpole siren. Amid the disciplined chaos, a new figure appeared at the entrance, a solitary presence that immediately drew attention. She was Emily Hart, her stride purposeful but calm, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder. She carried no fanfare, no introduction, only a quiet confidence that immediately unsettled those who noticed her. Whispers began to ripple through the nearby cadets. "Is that the new girl?" one muttered, elbowing another. "I heard she's just a transfer, probably won't last a week," another scoffed. The air hummed with curiosity and subtle judgment. Emily's face betrayed none of the reactions. She kept her gaze steady, scanning the faces around her, noting posture, demeanor, and tone with the precision of someone trained to observe more than speak. Lieutenant Riker, the Academy's stern yet fair training officer, emerged from the administration building, clipboard in hand. His sharp eyes fell on Emily and he paused as if weighing the situation. "Cadets," he called, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "This is Emily Hart. She will be joining Bravo Squad effective today. Treat her as any other member of your unit." There was a pause, a brief silence that hung heavy in the air. No mention of accolades, no hint of rank outside her cadet status. Riker's measured restraint was deliberate. Emily's reputation, he knew, would precede her soon enough, but for now, the unit had to discover her on its own. Emily inclined her head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement, and moved toward Bravo Squad's assigned barracks. Every step she took was measured, deliberate, yet fluid, a quiet elegance underlined by latent power. Cadets craned their necks to watch, exchanging glances that ranged from skepticism to outright derision. Most assumed she was just another untested recruit, perhaps someone who would falter under the intensity of the academy. Inside the barracks, the air smelled of polished boots, leather gear, and the faint musk of sweat, a battlefield of camaraderie and rivalry. The room buzzed with the energy of competitive egos. Dean, the squad's self-proclaimed alpha, leaned against the bunk with a smirk, eyes narrowing as Emily entered. "So this is the new girl," he said, voice dripping with condescension. Walker, his partner in mischief, chuckled. "I bet she's soft," he whispered to Troy, who nodded, equally confident that Emily would crumble under pressure. Emily's eyes, a piercing gray, swept over the room, assessing. She noticed subtle cues, the way Dean's shoulders tensed when others approached, Walker's nervous shifting of weight, Troy's attempts to mask insecurity with bravado. These small details were vital. She memorized them without effort. Her expression remained neutral, almost serene, as if nothing could disturb her focus. She said nothing, simply moved to her assigned bunk, placed her bag down, and began organizing her gear. The cadets exchanged incredulous glances. "She's just standing there doing nothing," Dean muttered. "Is she afraid? Too scared to talk?" Walker snickered, clearly enjoying the thought of embarrassing her later. Emily, of course, did not react. Every movement, every pause, every flicker of her gaze was deliberate. The silence she maintained was unsettling. It was not the timid silence of fear, but the composed silence of someone who could observe, calculate, and respond with precision. As the day progressed, Emily participated in the standard orientation drills. Onlookers watched her stumble slightly during the first obstacle course, a minor misstep she intentionally allowed. Murmurs arose. "See, I knew she couldn't handle it." Dean grinned, convinced that the early assessment validated his assumptions. Yet Emily did not appear flustered. Instead, she focused intently on her footing, her breathing, and her surroundings. Every cadence of the drill was absorbed, studied, and remembered. During lunch, cadets clustered together, debating the merits of the new girl. Rumors circulated, some claiming she had no experience, others whispering that she was Special Forces material, though none could confirm. Emily ate alone at the far end of the cafeteria, yet she remained acutely aware of all interactions, catching snippets of conversations and evaluating intent with a sharp, almost surgical attention. Occasionally she smiled softly to herself, though no one could discern whether it was amusement, curiosity, or something else entirely? Lieutenant Riker observed from a distance, leaning against the cafeteria doorway. He had chosen not to reveal Emily's true credentials. Letting the cadets underestimate her was strategic. Respect earned through observation and action was far more powerful than forced reverence. Emily's calm posture, quiet confidence, and meticulous attention to detail hinted that she was no ordinary recruit. In Riker's eyes, the squad had just been given a puzzle, and Emily was the solution they did not yet understand. As the afternoon sun waned, cadets returned to the training fields for drills. Emily followed instructions perfectly but with subtle finesse. She avoided overt displays of strength or skill, instead focusing on precision, timing, and awareness. Observers noted her efficiency and grace, but most still misread it as cautiousness rather than expertise. She completed each drill seamlessly, silently challenging anyone who doubted her without uttering a single word. By evening, whispers persisted. "She's weird, too quiet. She might survive, but she won't lead. Something about her, I don't trust it." Emily walked past them carrying her duffel, every step deliberate, every eye in the room following her. She paused briefly at the academy's flagpole, gazing skyward. A fleeting smile crossed her lips, barely perceptible. This was not a girl afraid of the unknown. She was someone who had faced far greater challenges, and the academy's expectations were merely the opening act. Lieutenant Riker approached her quietly. "First day?" he asked. Emily nodded. "They'll learn," she replied softly, tone measured yet firm. Riker's approving nod was subtle, acknowledging that the quiet, unassuming girl would soon command respect, not through intimidation but through skill, composure, and undeniable authority. As night settled over the academy, the shadows of the barracks stretched long and foreboding. Cadets whispered late into the evening, planning pranks, imagining ways to embarrass the new girl. They had no idea they were about to confront a force far beyond their assumptions. Emily, lying on her bunk, closed her eyes briefly, reviewing every observation of the day. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. And she was ready. The sun had dipped low, casting long, restless shadows across Bravo Squad's barracks. Inside, the room hummed with the low, constant buzz of cadet chatter. Dean, Walker, and Troy leaned against the bunks, strategically positioning themselves near Emily's assigned bed. Their eyes followed her every move, though she remained silent, unpacking her gear with meticulous care. The cadets had no idea that every glance, every movement she made, was being logged and analyzed, mental notes filed away for future calculations. Dean broke the silence first, loud enough to draw attention. "So this is the great new girl, huh? Think she can keep up with us?" He smirked, letting his words linger, soaking in the energy of mockery. Walker chuckled, leaning closer to Troy. "I bet she's never even run an obstacle course properly. She'll break within a week. Mark my words." Troy nodded, clearly enjoying the thought of embarrassing her. The trio exchanged looks that said, "Without words, we run this squad. She's not welcome." Emily kept her movements slow, deliberate, and neutral. She didn't respond, didn't flinch, and didn't betray emotion. Yet her gray eyes swept over the three men, noting every twitch, every micro-expression. The tightening of Dean's jaw when he felt challenged. The way Walker's hands trembled slightly when anticipating a confrontation. Troy's attempt at confident posture that couldn't hide the flutter of doubt beneath. Every detail became part of her mental map of the squad's dynamics, a silent dossier that she would call upon later. The other cadets whispered from across the room. Some shrugged, others rolled their eyes, already assuming Emily was a lost cause. None realized they were witnessing something far more strategic than hesitation. Emily's calm demeanor exuded a quiet authority, even if her peers were too arrogant to see it. She was studying, learning, and quietly planning, not for immediate confrontation, but for understanding who would react how under pressure. Dean paced in front of her bunk. "Hey, you don't have to just stand there like some." He stopped mid-sentence, annoyed at how unbothered she appeared. Walker nudged him, stifling a grin. "See, she's got no fight. That's perfect. I love this. Let's test her in the field tonight." Dean's eyes glimmered with the thrill of potential humiliation. "Yeah," he said, voice low. We'll corner her during the navigation drill, show her she's not part of Bravo, that'll scare her off." Emily's mind registered every word, but she didn't react. She didn't need to. Their plan, filled with arrogance and overconfidence, was exactly the type of scenario she had anticipated. She understood human behavior on a level the cadets could not begin to fathom. They believed themselves the hunters, but she was already calculating how the evening would unfold, predicting their mistakes with near-perfect clarity. Later, as the cadets practiced drills, Emily followed instructions with precision, though not showing her full capabilities. She allowed herself to stumble occasionally, small missteps that encouraged her rival's sense of superiority. Dean laughed aloud at one such stumble, clearly pleased to see what he thought was a weakness. "Told you, she can't even keep up with the basics," he said, triumphant. But Emily's calm, unwavering expression betrayed none of the internal calculations she was running. Every misstep was deliberate, every perceived weakness a tool for observation. During a brief break, cadets clustered in corners, whispering about Emily's presence. "I can't tell if she's nervous or just dumb," one muttered. Another replied, "She's too calm, that's what freaks me out." The whispers, the curiosity, and the speculation fueled Emily's mental mapping of the squad. She noted alliances, rivalries, and the subtle power hierarchies forming around her. It was not just survival, it was preparation for eventual confrontation, though none of the cadets realized it. Walker approached her casually, trying to gauge her reaction. "So, new girl, think you can hang with the real cadets?" His tone was casual, but the intent was clear: provoke a response, catch a hint of fear, confirm his superiority. Emily looked up, eyes steady, voice even. "I'll follow the protocol, that's all that matters." No arrogance, no defensiveness, just calm assurance. Walker stumbled slightly, unsettled by her unwavering focus. Dean's smirk faltered as he noticed the lack of any visible intimidation. As evening fell, plans among Dean, Walker, and Troy began to solidify. They whispered about isolating Emily during the night navigation exercise, imagining scenarios where she might panic or retreat. Each spoke over the other, competitive egos fueling their confidence. "We'll corner her," Dean whispered, "and she'll have no choice but to quit." The words were heavy with certainty, yet unknowingly they had outlined the very mistakes Emily had anticipated. Every approach angle, every potential physical move, and every psychological tactic they intended to use had been mapped in her mind already. Emily, meanwhile, prepared herself in silence. She reviewed each cadet's tendencies, predicted likely mistakes, and ran mental simulations of how the evening might unfold. Unlike her peers, she knew the battlefield extended beyond physical drills. It included ego, fear, perception, and reaction under pressure. Her calm demeanor was not naivety, it was discipline. While the cadets sought to intimidate her, she understood that dominance required precision, not aggression. By the time night cloaked the academy in darkness, the squad had already begun moving toward the forest for the navigation exercise. Emily fell in line seamlessly, allowing the cadence and rhythm to dictate her pace. Cadets whispered nervously, sensing that she didn't behave like anyone they had faced before. They were unaware that she had already memorized every tree line, every trail fork, every potential point of confrontation. The stage for the night's test was set, and unbeknownst to them, the hunter and the hunted were about to reverse roles. As the first stars began to appear overhead, Emily's eyes scanned the dimly lit forest. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves, every distant sound was logged in her mind. The cadets' overconfidence filled the night air like oxygen, giving her a silent advantage. While they believed themselves in control, Emily's composure grew with each step. She was not nervous, not intimidated, not even concerned. She was ready. And somewhere in the shadows beyond the tree line, Lieutenant Riker watched, a quiet smile tugging at his lips. He knew the cadets. Arrogance had placed them in a position they could not anticipate. And Emily Hart, the quiet, unassuming new girl, would prove to them exactly how wrong they were. The forest loomed ahead, dark and silent, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves underfoot. The night navigation exercise was designed to test cadets' endurance leadership and problem-solving skills under stress, but for Bravo Squad, it had become an opportunity to prove superiority over Emily Hart. Dean led the way, lantern swaying, voice low and conspiratorial. "Remember the plan," he muttered, glancing at Walker and Troy. "We corner her, make her feel small. If she can't handle it, she'll quit." The words were said with confidence, yet unknowingly they outlined every mistake they were about to make. Emily followed silently, her pace steady, her senses alive to every subtle shift in the forest. Her eyes, gray and calculating, flicked from shadow to shadow. She noted Dean's overly aggressive stride, Walker's tendency to glance nervously over his shoulder and Troy's heavy breathing, a sign of anxiety hidden behind bravado. She memorized the forest terrain with the precision of a seasoned operative. Tree lines, uneven ground, low-hanging branches, and hidden dips in the soil. Every element could become a strategic advantage if used correctly. Dean motioned for Emily to fall behind, using subtle hand signals that he assumed she would ignore. "Go on, new girl," he taunted softly, though loud enough for her to hear. "Let's see what you're made of." The other cadets snickered, their anticipation rising with each step. Walker whispered, "She's going to crumble, I can feel it." They had no idea that Emily had anticipated this very scenario. The forest, the plan, the exact timing, they were all mapped in her mind. Emily kept her composure, stepping quietly and purposefully, blending into the shadows. She was aware of every sound, every rustle of leaves, the way the wind shifted through the branches. She understood their plan before they even executed it. Dean would move to block her path, Walker would attempt to intimidate, and Troy would flank from the side. All predictable, all easily countered. She allowed herself a faint smile, imperceptible in the dim light, knowing the coming moments would be their first real lesson in humility. Minutes passed as they ventured deeper into the forest. The cadets whispered to each other constantly, checking their angles and ensuring Emily couldn't escape. "We need to split up," Dean said, nodding at the others. "Walker, take the left, Troy, right, I'll block straight ahead, she won't know what hit her." The trio moved into position, confident in their plan. Their confidence was palpable, almost suffocating, but Emily remained unshaken. She simply adjusted her footing, keeping herself centered and balanced, ready to respond if necessary. Walker crept along the left flank, his lantern casting flickering shadows on the underbrush. "I've got her," he whispered. Troy mirrored his movements on the right, crouching slightly, ready to advance. Dean stepped directly in front of Emily, arms wide, blocking the main trail. "Turn back, new girl," he said, voice low but firm. "This isn't for you." He expected fear, perhaps hesitation, but Emily simply regarded him with calm, unyielding eyes. "You're making a mistake," Emily said quietly, her tone even but carrying a subtle authority that made Dean pause for just a fraction of a second. He blinked, surprised by the lack of panic in her voice. "What?" he demanded, stepping closer. Troy and Walker exchanged uncertain glances. Something was off. She was supposed to falter. She was supposed to be intimidated. And yet Emily's calm, composed demeanor radiated confidence, an unspoken warning that their assumptions were dangerously wrong. Dean lunged slightly, trying to push her back as part of the intimidation plan. Walker advanced from the left, hands raised as if to grab her. Troy moved closer from the right, attempting to block any escape. The forest seemed to grow heavier around them, the mist thickening, shadows lengthening. Emily's body shifted with the fluidity of trained combat. In one motion, she sidestepped Dean, subtly using his momentum against him, causing him to stumble forward slightly without injury. Walker froze, unsure of how she moved so effortlessly. Troy stopped, eyebrows raised, suddenly aware that their plan was unraveling. Emily's eyes darted briefly toward the moonlight filtering through the trees. Everything had been predicted. She could see the angles of approach, the imbalance of their footing, the hesitation behind bravado. "This is your last chance," she said, voice calm yet firm, giving them the opportunity to back down. Silence followed. The cadets realized too late that their own arrogance had set them up. The forest, once a simple training ground, had become a stage where overconfidence would meet precision and skill. From a distance, Lieutenant Riker observed the unfolding scene. His posture was relaxed, yet his eyes were keenly focused on the cadet's movements. He had intentionally allowed this confrontation to occur, knowing that the squad's ego would compel them to act before fully assessing their opponent. And he knew Emily Hart, quiet, unassuming, lethal in skill and precise in judgment, would turn the exercise into a lesson they would never forget. Dean took another step forward, frustration mixing with fear. "You're not even trying," he shouted, thinking he could provoke her into making a mistake. Emily's lips curved slightly. "I am," she replied, "just not in the way you expect." Her words, calm and almost serene, sent a shiver down the spines of the cadets. Something about her presence, measured and unshaken, communicated power far beyond what they had anticipated. Walker whispered to Troy, a note of panic creeping in. "Did she just—" He trailed off, realizing he couldn't articulate what he saw. Emily's control over the situation was complete, silent, and absolute. She was no longer simply a cadet. She had become the unseen force shaping the outcome, forcing the others to react instead of act. Their carefully crafted plan, full of arrogance and intimidation, had no effect. The forest air thickened with anticipation. Every step, every pause, every movement of Emily Hart was deliberate, precise, and measured. She waited for the moment when she would demonstrate that the quiet, unassuming new girl was far more than anyone had imagined. The cadets' faces reflected disbelief, confusion, and an unspoken realization that they had underestimated the newcomer. And in that still, tense forest, as the cadets prepared to corner her, Emily knew the real exercise was about to begin, and this time she would teach the lesson they would never forget. The forest was alive with tension, the mist curling between tree trunks like smoke over a battlefield. Dean, Walker, and Troy had positioned themselves strategically, confident that the new girl would falter under intimidation. "Here," Dean whispered, stepping into Emily's path, lantern swaying. "Get out of here." The command was both challenge and threat. Walker and Troy flanked her, closing the angles, ensuring escape was impossible. Their breaths were heavy, anticipation thick in the air. They thought they were in control. Emily, however, remained calm, her stance relaxed yet alert, a coiled force ready to respond. The shadows seemed to deepen around them, the moonlight filtering through the leaves in fragmented beams. Emily's gray eyes swept the space, noting every branch, every slight dip in the ground, the uneven footing beneath their boots. She observed the cadets' movements, subtle ticks that betrayed their overconfidence. Dean shifted his weight forward, intending to intimidate. Walker's hand trembled slightly as he prepared to step in, and Troy's jaw tightened, revealing the smallest hint of doubt. Emily's mind cataloged it all, analyzing angles, momentum, and timing. "You don't belong here," Dean hissed, advancing slightly. "You're not part of Bravo, you'll never be like us." His voice carried authority born of arrogance, yet he had no idea how completely mistaken he was. Emily's lips curved in the faintest smile. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly, her tone calm but firm. The words hung in the mist like a warning. Dean blinked, unsettled by the absence of fear, his voice faltering for the first time. Walker tried to step closer, hands raised, attempting a light push to see how she would react. "Step aside, new girl," he murmured, trying to sound authoritative, yet uncertainty edged his tone. Troy mirrored him on the other side, a similar attempt at dominance. But Emily did not flinch, did not retreat. Her body shifted in subtle, almost imperceptible ways, preparing for precise, controlled movement. Every small adjustment was calculated, a testament to the training and experience no cadet could comprehend. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Leaves rustled as Emily sidestepped Dean with a fluid motion, using his forward momentum to destabilize him just enough that he stumbled into the underbrush. Walker froze, unsure of what he had just witnessed. Troy's eyes widened, his confident posture faltering. Emily's movement was seamless, efficient, and unthreatening, but it left the cadets momentarily stunned, their assumptions crumbling. The hunter had become the hunted. "You how?" Dean stammered, regaining balance but clearly shaken. Emily's calm demeanor did not waver. "You wanted to corner me," she said, voice steady, "but you miscalculated." The cadets exchanged panicked glances, suddenly aware that their arrogance had blinded them to the possibility that the new girl was more than just another recruit. Every plan they had devised, every angle they had plotted, had already been anticipated and countered. Walker's hand dropped slightly from nervousness. Troy's jaw tightened, realizing that their simple intimidation tactics were ineffective. Emily moved with quiet precision, keeping herself balanced, centered, and ready. She was not aggressive, but every small motion demonstrated control over herself, over the space, and over the cadets' escalating panic. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Each cadet was forced to consider that they might have underestimated her entirely. Dean tried again, this time attempting to grab her arm. "Step back, now," he barked, anger creeping into his voice. Emily reacted instinctively but with minimal force. A light sidestep, a subtle pivot, and Dean stumbled forward once more, arms flailing slightly before regaining footing. The three cadets froze, hearts racing, minds spinning. Their initial plan had failed before it could truly begin. Panic mingled with disbelief. They had expected fear, retreat, and submission. Instead, they were faced with composed precision. "Enough," Emily said calmly, her voice carrying weight beyond its volume. "There's still a choice. Back down now and no one gets hurt." The words were simple, but the authority behind them was undeniable. The cadets hesitated, realizing that they had been lured into a confrontation far beyond their control. Their bravado, once unshakable, faltered in the face of composure they could not comprehend. From the ridge above, Lieutenant Riker blew a sharp whistle. "Stand down." His authoritative voice cut through the mist, echoing through the trees. The cadets froze, glances darting between Emily and the lieutenant. Dean, Walker, and Troy realized too late that they had misjudged the situation entirely. Emily's calm, measured control over the confrontation had exposed the limitations of their confidence and arrogance. She had turned what was meant to intimidate into a lesson of precision and discipline. Emily's eyes swept the forest one last time, gray and calculating, noting every detail. Every breath, every rustle of leaves, every shadow was catalogued. She had not harmed them, had not needed to. The cadets' minds were already registering the lesson. Underestimate the quiet, unassuming presence at your peril. Their plan had collapsed under the sheer precision of her calm, trained movements. Dean finally straightened, pale, jaw clenched. I didn't think," his words trailed off, unspoken in full realization. Walker and Troy exchanged glances, uncertainty and fear replacing arrogance. Emily remained poised, calm, and collected, a force that needed no display of aggression to command respect. She had made her point silently, efficiently, and conclusively. The mist thickened as the forest settled back into an eerie calm. The cadets, humbled and unnerved, began to step back, their earlier confidence dissipating entirely. Emily gave them one final measured look. No anger, no triumph, just quiet authority. She had not needed to shout, strike, or dominate physically. Her presence, control, and precision had done everything for her. Lieutenant Riker descended from the ridge, face calm but eyes sharp. "This is your wake-up call," he said firmly. "Respect is earned, not assumed, and today some of you learned that the hard way." Emily turned to him briefly, nodding in acknowledgement. The cadets, meanwhile, absorbed the weight of the lesson. They had cornered the new girl, confident in their dominance. Instead, they had met composure and skill they could barely comprehend. The forest seemed to exhale, mist curling around trees as if acknowledging the end of the confrontation. Emily Hart, quiet and unassuming, had proven her presence without aggression, and the cadets, Dean, Walker, Troy, and the others, were left to grapple with the realization that appearances could be deceiving, and arrogance was a dangerous liability. In the shadows of the night, Emily adjusted her stance slightly, preparing for what would come next. The first confrontation was over, but the lessons were only beginning. The forest was silent after the confrontation, save for the faint rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle wind. Dean, Walker, and Troy stood frozen, each struggling to comprehend the events that had just unfolded. They had cornered Emily Hart, certain their plan would intimidate her into retreat. Instead, she had moved with a precision and calmness that left them disoriented and questioning everything they thought they knew. Their bravado had dissolved in moments, replaced by disbelief and unease. They glanced at each other, searching for reassurance, but found none. Emily's gray eyes scanned the trio quietly, observing their panic with clinical detachment. She had not raised her voice. She had not thrown a punch. Yet her every action had communicated a level of control far beyond ordinary cadets. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the next move, as if acknowledging the shifting balance of power. Then from the shadows above the tree line, Lieutenant Riker's sharp whistle cut through the stillness. "Enough," he commanded, his voice authoritative and unyielding. The cadets froze, uncertainty written plainly on their faces. Riker stepped forward into a shaft of moonlight, his expression calm but eyes blazing with awareness. He looked at the three cadets who had so confidently cornered Emily and shook his head slightly. "You've miscalculated, all of you," he said, tone firm. "It's time you understood exactly who you were dealing with." Dean's face paled as he tried to speak. I don't understand." His voice faltered and he swallowed hard. Emily remained composed, her stance unchanging, eyes fixed on the cadets' expressions. There was no anger in her demeanor, only calm authority, a silent challenge for the cadets to accept what was coming. Riker gestured toward her. "Cadets, meet your newest instructor in training, Emily Hart. Navy SEAL, top-performing operator decorated for covert operations and leadership under extreme conditions. She's not just another cadet." The words hit like a thunderclap. Dean's jaw dropped. Walker's lantern nearly slipped from his hand. Troy's wide eyes reflected a mixture of fear, shock, and awe. They had assumed they were confronting an inexperienced recruit, someone they could intimidate easily. Instead, they had unknowingly challenged the finest operator in the unit. Emily's lips curved into the faintest smile, subtle and almost imperceptible. She had not intended to impress or frighten anyone. She had merely acted according to her training and experience. The cadets, however, were in no position to misinterpret the message. Every step she had taken, every motion, every silent calculation, now had a new context. She was not to be underestimated. Dean swallowed hard, finally finding his voice. You're the—" His sentence hung unfinished, words failing him. Walker stammered, I thought we thought." Confusion and disbelief tangled with their rapidly growing respect. Troy's earlier bravado was gone, replaced by humility. They realized with sudden clarity how wrong their assumptions had been. Emily stepped forward slightly, her movements still deliberate but unthreatening. "I didn't come here to humiliate anyone," she said, voice calm but carrying the unmistakable weight of authority. "I'm here to teach, to guide, and to challenge you to be better than you think you can be. But first, you need to learn humility. Tonight was a lesson in underestimating others. There is nothing to fear and respect. Arrogance, however, can be dangerous." The cadets absorbed her words in stunned silence. Dean, the self-proclaimed alpha, could hardly speak. He had intended to dominate her, to prove himself superior, and instead he had been disarmed metaphorically and psychologically without a single strike. Walker's hand, still slightly trembling, fell to his sides. Troy's posture slumped, an unspoken acknowledgement of defeat. They had confronted the new girl, expecting weakness, and encountered mastery. Lieutenant Riker stepped closer, nodding approvingly at Emily. "Cadets, you've just learned a critical lesson," he said firmly. "Appearances can be deceiving. Confidence without skill can lead to misjudgment, and skill without humility is meaningless. Emily Hart exemplifies discipline, control, and leadership. Your actions tonight will be remembered, and your attitude must change if you wish to succeed in this academy." Emily took a deep breath, allowing the forest's night air to settle around them. "I did not corner anyone. I merely allowed you to reveal your true selves," she said softly, her tone deliberate, measured. "If you want to challenge me, you must first respect the effort, experience, and discipline it took to reach this point. I'm not here to intimidate, I'm here to guide. The choice is yours, learn or repeat your mistakes." The cadets glanced at each other, each wrestling with the mixture of awe and shame that filled their minds. Dean finally muttered almost inaudibly, I misjudged you. Emily's faint smile acknowledged the words, though she said nothing further. Walker and Troy followed suit, voices low and respectful, admitting their underestimation. The forest, once tense with confrontation, now seemed almost reverent, as if recognizing the end of one lesson and the beginning of another. Riker's gaze swept across the cadets, lingering on each face in turn. "Let this moment be remembered," he said. "Tonight, you encountered not just skill, but discipline, awareness, and composure. These are qualities you will need if you intend to survive the challenges ahead. Emily Hart is here to teach them, and I expect you to listen." Emily nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of Riker's words and of the cadets' tentative acceptance. Her presence, calm and authoritative, had already begun to reshape the squad's perception. They were no longer the hunters. They were students facing a master. The lesson had been delivered without anger, without violence, but with precision and undeniable clarity. Dean, Walker, and Troy exchanged glances once more, each expression a mix of relief and lingering disbelief. They had challenged her, confident in their superiority, and had been proven wrong. The weight of their arrogance pressed heavily upon them, but now, beneath the shock, respect was taking root. Emily Hart had revealed herself not as a threat, but as a guide, a teacher who could elevate their skills beyond what they had imagined. The forest seemed to exhale, mist swirling gently among the trees. Emily Hart, the quiet, unassuming new girl, had transformed in a single confrontation. She had not just defended herself. She had dismantled assumptions, corrected arrogance, and established a standard for discipline and respect. The cadets had learned a lesson they would carry for the rest of their academy experience. As they began moving back toward the main trail, the cadets fell silent, each absorbed in reflection. Emily walked with measured steps, gray eyes occasionally glancing at each member of the squad. Her presence radiated authority without force, a living reminder that skill, patience, and composure often spoke louder than bravado. Lieutenant Riker followed quietly, confident that this revelation would mark a turning point in the cadets' growth. Tonight had been more than a navigation exercise. It had been a revelation, a lesson in humility, and a demonstration of mastery. Emily Hart, the quiet new girl, had become a force that demanded recognition. And for Dean, Walker, Troy, and the rest of Bravo's squad, the memory of this night, the realization that appearances could deceive and skill could astonish, would linger long after the mist cleared from the forest. The forest returned to quiet as the cadets slowly followed Emily and Lieutenant Riker back to the academy. The earlier confrontation lingered in every glance, every hesitant step. Dean, Walker, and Troy walked side by side, speechless but deeply aware of the weight of their misjudgment. Words had failed them when arrogance collided with expertise, leaving only the sharp sting of humility. They could still hear the echoes of Emily's calm voice, her gray eyes imprinted in memory, commanding respect without a single raised hand. Back at the barracks, the atmosphere was heavy with reflection. Dean sat on his bunk, head lowered, replaying the encounter over and over. Walker paced slowly, hands gripping his belt nervously, while Troy slumped against the wall, shoulders heavy with silent acknowledgement. Their confidence had been shattered, replaced by an awareness of how small their bravado seemed in comparison to experience and discipline. The forest exercise, meant to test their physical skills, had revealed gaps in their judgment and self-control far more critical than stamina or strength. Lieutenant Riker addressed the squad in the common room, his gaze sweeping over every cadet. "What you witnessed tonight is more than a display of skill," he said, voice firm yet calm. "It's a demonstration of discipline, observation, and composure under pressure." Emily Hart did not need to raise her voice or strike. She turned arrogance into a teaching moment. Learn from it. Respect must be earned, and actions speak louder than words. The room was silent, except for the soft shuffle of cadet boots, each person internalizing the lesson. Emily remained quiet at first, observing the cadets' reactions. Her eyes scanned the room, noting those who were still skeptical, those who were humbled, and those whose pride had been bruised but not broken. Then she spoke, her voice calm, precise, and commanding attention. "You made assumptions tonight," she began. "You assumed weakness, underestimating skill and experience. That's a dangerous mistake in any operational environment. Arrogance can cloud judgment, and overconfidence can be fatal. My goal is not to intimidate you. It is to teach you to see beyond assumptions and think critically under pressure." The cadets listened, some stiffly, others with heads bowed. Emily continued, explaining that the night's exercise was only a microcosm of real-life operations, where every decision, every movement, and every perception could mean the difference between success and failure. She emphasized the importance of observation, patience, and precision. "Skills without strategy are wasted energy," she said. "Confidence without awareness is vulnerability." Tonight, you learned that the quiet observer can be the most formidable presence in any situation. Dean finally raised his eyes, looking at Emily with a mix of awe and humility. I didn't realize," he began, voice trailing off. Emily's gaze softened slightly, but her tone remained firm. "You assumed I would react like you expected. That was your first mistake. The second was underestimating the importance of discipline and composure. You have the opportunity to correct both. Learn, practice, and apply. That is how you transform skill into mastery." Walker nodded slowly, his expression reflective. "We misjudged you," he admitted, voice low. We didn't think you could," he trailed off, words failing to capture the realization. Emily didn't need further elaboration. She simply gave a small nod, signaling that acknowledgement alone was insufficient. Action and improvement would follow. Troy's jaw relaxed, his earlier arrogance replaced by quiet determination. The impact of the night's events had settled deeply into each cadet's mind. Over the following weeks, Emily assumed a subtle but authoritative role in training Bravo Squad. She did not lecture with ego. Instead, she demonstrated, guided, and corrected. Tactical drills became exercises in precision and teamwork rather than individual competition. Endurance runs were paired with lessons on packing, observation, and efficiency. Every interaction was an opportunity to instill discipline, resilience, and respect. The cadets began to notice the changes in themselves as their confidence grew, now tempered by awareness and strategic thinking. Dean, who had once dominated with bravado, began to understand leadership beyond force and intimidation. He learned to anticipate challenges and recognize the importance of patience and observation. Walker, initially skeptical and timid, discovered a capacity for focus and tactical reasoning he had never realized. Troy, once reliant on sheer physicality, honed his skills in coordination, timing, and situational analysis. The squad slowly transformed, the earlier humiliation giving way to competence, confidence, and a newfound respect for their instructor and each other. Emily's mentorship was rigorous but fair. She corrected mistakes without belittling, pushed cadets beyond their perceived limits, and encouraged critical thinking under pressure. "Excellence is earned, not assumed," she reminded them repeatedly. Each day her lessons expanded beyond drills: leadership, trust, teamwork, and the subtle art of reading situations before reacting. By instilling these principles, she was shaping not just cadets but future leaders capable of thinking independently and executing with precision. Lieutenant Riker watched with quiet satisfaction. Emily's approach was transforming Bravo Squad in ways he had anticipated but few others would have imagined. The cadets were no longer reckless or arrogant. They were disciplined, strategic, and cooperative. Emily's impact extended beyond physical training. It was molding character, judgment, and resilience. The night in the forest had been the catalyst, but the true transformation was unfolding now, in the subtle rhythms of daily training and interaction. By the end of the first month, the cadets had begun to internalize Emily's lessons. They moved with coordinated precision, communicated efficiently, and approached challenges with thoughtful strategy rather than impulsive bravado. Dean, Walker, and Troy, once overconfident, now led by example, demonstrating humility and composure. They respected Emily not out of fear, but out of acknowledgement for her skill, leadership, and unwavering guidance. Bravo Squad had been reshaped, their earlier arrogance replaced with capability and strategic awareness. Emily observed the progress with quiet satisfaction. Her mission was not to dominate or impress, but to cultivate skill, awareness, and leadership. The cadets had learned their first lesson in humility. Now they were learning the deeper lesson of mastery through discipline. She understood that respect was earned over time, and patience was as vital as precision. The transformation of Bravo Squad was gradual, deliberate, and undeniable. The night's encounter in the forest had been the turning point, but the ongoing mentorship would cement the lessons learned. Emily Hart, once underestimated, had become the quiet force shaping a squad of cadets into something far greater than they had imagined. And as each day passed, the cadets realized that the new girl, once mocked and dismissed, had become the cornerstone of their growth and the standard by which they would measure their own potential. Weeks had passed since the forest confrontation, and the transformation of Bravo Squad was tangible. The cadets moved with quiet precision, their confidence no longer reckless but tempered with awareness. Dean, Walker, and Troy, once arrogant and impulsive, had begun to embrace Emily Hart's teachings. Each step, each drill, and every team exercise reflected a newfound discipline, a respect for skill, and an understanding of strategy that had previously eluded them. On a crisp morning, Lieutenant Riker gathered the squad on the training field for a comprehensive evaluation exercise. The challenge was multi-tiered: physical endurance, tactical decision-making, teamwork under pressure, and situational awareness. It was designed not only to test skills, but to gauge the effectiveness of Emily's mentorship. The cadets knew this was no ordinary drill. This was the moment to demonstrate that they had absorbed her lessons. Emily observed silently, standing slightly apart, arms crossed, gray eyes sharp and attentive. The cadets could feel her gaze without seeing her reaction. Her presence was a reminder that skill, observation, and discipline still ruled the day. "Today," she said finally, voice calm yet commanding, "you will be tested not against each other but against the challenges I have set. Mistakes will cost you not only physically but strategically. Think, observe, and act. Execute with precision. Remember, arrogance has no place here." Dean glanced at Emily, nerves hidden behind a mask of composure. He exchanged a brief look with Walker and Troy. None spoke, understanding that this was a chance to redeem their earlier mistakes fully. The squad moved into position as the evaluation began. Obstacles, riddled with challenges requiring teamwork, coordination, and critical thinking, sprawled across the field. Every cadet felt the weight of expectation. Emily's calm authority a silent guiding force, shaping their actions even as they executed independently. The first challenge required navigating a complex obstacle course, with emphasis not just on speed but efficiency. Dean, once prone to rushing, now paced his squad strategically, communicating clearly and observing weaknesses. Walker coordinated with Troy to anticipate turns and potential pitfalls, guiding each other silently through the course. Emily's earlier lessons were evident in their precise movements, synchronized timing, and careful awareness of surroundings. They were no longer individuals competing for dominance. They were a unit executing with strategy. During the tactical simulation that followed, a scenario mimicking a hostile environment was set up. Cadets had to respond to sudden threats, assess potential ambush points, and make split-second decisions. The exercise was designed to provoke panic, uncertainty, and mistakes, but the squad remained composed. Dean gave orders decisively, Walker and Troy executed with precision, and each cadet's awareness and observation skills had clearly improved. Emily watched each move, noting the subtle but remarkable growth that had occurred since their initial confrontation. A critical moment arose when a simulated ambush forced the squad into a narrow wooded path. Normally, this would have induced chaos, panic, miscommunication, and mistakes. This time, however, the squad moved in unison, covering angles, anticipating reactions, and adjusting their formation based on situational awareness. Emily's training had instilled a mindset of observation and calm decision-making. She noted the precision with which they handled the threat, calculated movement, clear communication, and strategic anticipation. Their earlier arrogance had been replaced by tactical competence. At the end of the simulation, Lieutenant Riker signaled completion. He walked along the line, eyes sharp, voice measured. "Bravo Squad," he began. "Your performance today reflects a remarkable shift. Where there was once recklessness, there is now precision. Where there was doubt and arrogance, there is strategy, teamwork, and awareness. Emily Hart's guidance has been instrumental, but the credit goes to you for listening, learning, and executing under pressure." The cadets absorbed the words, pride mingling with humility. They had earned this recognition, but they understood that their growth had come at the cost of confronting their own flaws. Emily finally stepped forward. Her presence was commanding yet not intimidating. She allowed a rare smile to cross her face. "You've proven that lessons can be learned, humility can transform into competence, and teamwork is the true measure of skill," she said. "Remember, skill alone is not enough. Leadership, awareness, and composure define true excellence. You've taken the first step toward earning respect, not just from me but from each other." Dean, once brash and dismissive, spoke for the first time with sincerity. We underestimated you. I thought I knew what it meant to lead, to dominate, but I see now that strength without discipline is meaningless." His gaze met Emily's, acknowledgement and respect clear. Walker and Troy nodded in agreement, words unnecessary. Their actions and posture spoke volumes. The squad had transformed not just in skill, but in mindset. They had faced their own arrogance, confronted real expertise, and emerged better prepared for challenges ahead. The day ended with debriefs, evaluations, and quiet reflection. Emily's mentorship continued subtly, offering advice and corrections without condescension. Cadets were now capable of critical thinking, tactical planning, and composed execution under pressure. The transformation was undeniable. Bravo Squad was no longer just a group of ambitious cadets. They were a cohesive, strategic unit capable of facing challenges they had previously thought insurmountable. In the quiet moments after training, the cadets often found themselves watching Emily, trying to understand her calm authority. It was not fear that commanded respect, but mastery, observation, and composure. The lessons from the forest, the exercises, and the ongoing mentorship had created a shift not only in how they operated as a squad, but how they viewed leadership, skill, and humility. By nightfall, Bravo Squad gathered together, reflecting on their progress. Dean spoke again, voice steady but reverent. "We've learned more from you than we ever imagined, not just about skill, but about patience, observation, and leadership." Walker and Troy nodded, quietly acknowledging the truth of his words. Emily's calm gray eyes met theirs, and for the first time they realized that respect earned in action was far more enduring than authority assumed by arrogance. The forest exercises, the simulations, and the challenges had all been steps toward this moment. Emily had guided them patiently, correcting mistakes, fostering teamwork, and instilling discipline. Tonight, Bravo Squad had not only proven their competence, they had earned her respect as well. The quiet new girl, once underestimated and mocked, had transformed them through mastery, precision, and mentorship. And for Dean, Walker, Troy, and the entire squad, the lesson was clear. Respect is not demanded. It is earned through action, discipline, and composure. And Emily Hart, their instructor and the top Navy SEAL they had once mocked, had become the standard by which they would measure themselves. Months had passed since the night Bravo Squad first cornered Emily Hart in the forest. The cadets had undergone countless drills, simulations, and exercises under her careful mentorship. What had begun as skepticism, fear, and arrogance had transformed into discipline, strategic thinking, and quiet confidence. Dean, Walker, Troy, and the entire squad had internalized the lessons Emily had imparted, and their growth was evident not only in their skill but in their demeanor. They no longer rushed into challenges with reckless bravado. They analyzed, observed, and executed with precision. Emily watched them quietly during one late afternoon training session. Her gray eyes, calm and assessing, followed every movement, every adjustment, and every communication. She noticed the subtle changes. Dean now led with authority tempered by patience. Walker anticipated his teammates' needs and adjusted accordingly. Troy executed tactical maneuvers with foresight rather than relying solely on brute strength. Bravo's squad had become cohesive, coordinated, and capable, a unit that reflected the lessons she had imparted. The forest exercise from months ago had become legend among cadets. Whispers of the quiet new girl who outmaneuvered 3 cocky cadets circulated through the academy, growing in size and scope. Yet no exaggeration could match the truth. Emily Hart, the unassuming recruit and top Navy SEAL, had not only defended herself but had shaped the mindset of an entire squad. Her lessons had transcended tactics. They had forged character. Cadets now approached challenges differently, learning to respect the unseen, anticipate outcomes, and think strategically. Dean approached Emily as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the training field. "I wanted to thank you," he said quietly, his tone uncharacteristically sincere. "For everything, for the forest, the lessons, everything. I finally get it." Emily's lips curved slightly in acknowledgement, her expression calm yet approving. "You've done the work," she replied. "The understanding comes from within. I guided you, but you learned it. That is what matters. Leadership and discipline are earned, not given." Walker and Troy joined, nodding in agreement. "We underestimated you," Walker admitted, voice low, "and we misjudged ourselves. But thanks to you, we see things differently now, about strategy, teamwork, and even about respect." Troy's eyes met Emily's briefly. "We've learned more from you than we ever could have imagined. Not just tactics, but how to carry ourselves, how to think, how to act, and how to lead." Emily regarded them with quiet pride. Their acknowledgement wasn't just words. It reflected genuine transformation. Lieutenant Riker, standing nearby, watched the interaction with satisfaction. He had known Emily's potential, had anticipated the impact she would have on Bravo's squad, but witnessing the cadets' growth firsthand was remarkable. "This is what mentorship looks like," he said softly, more to himself than to anyone else. Emily had taken raw talent, unchecked arrogance, and inexperience, and molded it into cohesive, disciplined competence. It was a lesson that would extend far beyond any single exercise or simulation. The cadets' transformation was visible in everyday training. Where there had once been ego-driven competition, there was now collaboration. Decisions were made collectively, risks assessed thoughtfully, and mistakes analyzed for improvement rather than punished by blame. Emily's influence had become a silent standard that guided their behavior. Even when she wasn't present, the cadets instinctively applied her principles: observation before action, calmness under pressure, and respect for both teammates and challenges. One evening, the squad gathered around the campfire after a grueling endurance exercise. The firelight flickered across faces now marked by determination rather than doubt. Dean reflected aloud. "We used to think strength was about speed, power, or shouting orders. Now we see it's about patience, awareness, and understanding." Emily didn't just teach us how to be better cadets, she taught us how to be better people. Walker and Troy nodded silently, the words resonating deeply. Their laughter was lighter, camaraderie stronger, a bond forged through mutual growth and respect. Emily remained quiet, listening and observing, as was her habit. She allowed the cadets to claim their progress, to take ownership of their achievements. Her guidance had created independence, self-awareness, and the ability to lead without intimidation. She knew that true leadership was not about enforcing authority. It was about empowering others to discover their potential. Bravo's squad had not only learned to respect her, but they had also learned to respect themselves. Lieutenant Riker finally addressed the squad formally. "Tonight," he said, voice firm but warm, "you've demonstrated what happens when guidance meets determination. You've shown growth, cohesion, and resilience. Remember this: the lessons learned here aren't confined to drills or simulations. They apply in life, in leadership, and in every decision you make. Bravo Squad has earned its reputation not through arrogance or force, but through discipline, observation, and respect." Emily stood beside him, quiet but present. Her gaze swept the squad, nodding subtle signs of reflection, humility, and pride. The night in the forest, the countless drills, the strategic mentorship, all of it had culminated in this moment. A unit that had transformed from reckless confidence to composed competence. She knew that her work had left a lasting imprint, not just in their skill sets, but in their character. As the cadets settled for the night, Emily's thoughts lingered on the journey. She had arrived as the quiet, underestimated new girl. Through patience, precision, and mentorship, she had reshaped not only Bravo Squad but also the culture of respect and discipline within the unit. The legacy she left was not in accolades or recognition, but in the enduring change she inspired in those who had once dismissed her. The forest, the drills, and the trials had all become symbols of growth. Cadets would carry the lessons of observation, humility, and mastery into their careers and beyond. Emily Hart's presence had proven that skill and composure could command respect without aggression, that mentorship could transform not just ability but mindset, and that true leadership was earned, never assumed. As the night air settled over the academy, Emily stood silently, watching the cadets' campfires flicker like tiny beacons. A soft smile graced her lips, unassuming yet satisfied. The quiet new girl had become a standard, a guide, and a force of transformation. Bravo Squad had learned, grown, and evolved, and the impact of her guidance would endure far longer than any single exercise or challenge. Her legacy was complete, not in triumph or recognition, but in the lasting strength, discipline, and unity she had instilled. The shadows of the forest whispered around her, a reminder of the journey from confrontation to mastery, from arrogance to respect. And in that quiet, enduring space, Emily Hart, Navy SEAL and unassuming mentor, had left her mark on Bravo Squad and on the future leaders they were becoming.